Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square.
And I'm Sam Osterhout, the executive producer here at Lincoln Square.
And welcome to the weekly assignment, where Sam and I talk to you about what's coming up this week on Lincoln Square, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Well, it was an interesting weekend, as usual, Sam. I think we all kind of awoke to news that a senator was dead, and it wasn't the senator that we were expecting. Lindsey Graham, a longtime Republican senator out of South Carolina, and he was one of the sharpest Trump critics when he was running for president against him in 2016. I mean, he has that famous tweet that's still up, if we choose Donald, if we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we deserve it. I think it's fascinating that he never took that down, even as his nose was so firmly placed up Trump's ass.
Yeah, I always wonder about that. Why didn't he remove that? He just didn't need to.
Was this his conscience? We're probably giving him way too much credit. But, we know that politicians scrub all the time. We watch this in campaigns, and it would have been the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes. Look, I think the story of him is that he was at one point a very well-respected senator across the board. He's always been a bit of a war hawk. He loves killing people. He loves it when we kill people.
Yeah, the fact that we went to war with Iran, did make the last year of his life. Let's be honest.
That's it. That's it. All of that aside, he came out strongly against Trump, and then he became Trump's greatest ally, right? Yeah. He did this, and then he became that. He was this, and then he became that. And I think all of that, Stuart Stevens had an amazing video this weekend.
Now we have a column out by Stuart as well that's on Lincoln Square right now as we speak.
Yeah, and you guys got to check it out. But it's the story of his life is that what appeared to be some sense of integrity turned out to be opportunism always. And that's where we are. And the opportunism is, look, Trump was an opportunist. If he never became president, he would have just been a New York opportunist cheating the people with whom he worked or contracted, right? But
and he wouldn't be a billionaire.
And he wouldn't be a billionaire, not by a long shot. But that opportunism is destroying all of us, and I think that's the tragedy here. Graham's opportunism and lack of integrity is spilling over into our society, right? Our economy, our culture. He is degrading the United States, or he did. And that's the story. He left the world a worse place than he found it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Stuart gets into some of this. And as somebody who, covered the McCain 2008 campaign, Lindsey Graham was a fixture. And, I wasn't on the road with the national campaign. I was covering it from Michigan, where, it turned out to be a pretty decisive primary. That's where Mitt Romney really tied up the nomination and was considered to be, the hometown son, even though he had left Michigan long time ago. Yeah. And McCain had actually won Michigan in 2000 against George W. Bush in a real upset.
Forgot about that.
McCain was, very optimistic that he could pull out. In the end, he didn't. And, Lindsey Graham was part of that Three Amigos with Joe Lieberman, the conservative Democratic senator, back in the day when there actually were actual conservatives in the Democratic Party, not just like squishy moderates. And then Lindsey Graham and McCain. And I bought that Lindsey Graham was a true believer. He was a hawk on foreign policy, but, he believed in that kind of, baseline mainstream conservatism that John McCain represented, and somebody who wouldn't necessarily always toe the party line. He would stand up if there was something that really irked him, like McCain-Feingold went after campaign finance. That's been obliterated by this Supreme Court, but I kind of enjoyed Lindsey Graham's 2016 campaign because he was just like out there. He knew he wasn't going to win, but he was just talking shit about Donald Trump, and it all seemed very honest. And, it was a great anecdote to people who just kept falling in line for this guy. And then he does the biggest heel turn of all time. And he's one of these guys who successfully ingratiated himself even more than Marco Rubio or JD Vance, which, they have bigger positions of power, but he was Trump's golfing buddy. And, he was just there for Trump all the time. He was the one who was making sure that Trump got a plum, seat at McCain's funeral, even though McCain's family didn't want that dude anywhere near the funeral.
Yep.
And so to watch this metamorphosis, I think the best theory that I've heard on it was that Lindsey Graham was always in McCain's shadow. And with Trump, he actually developed a position of power on his own. He was on the budget committee. People were actually listening to Lindsey Graham as a person, although he was just a Trump acolyte.
Yep.
And so that kind of, tripped his ego, because if there's anything we know about politicians, they're about ego. But it's a really sad, tragic story, and certainly not the one I think we thought we would be talking about this morning.
No, certainly not. And I think that, unlike McConnell, who's always just been fucking terrible, right? Lindsey Graham had, and this is the other thing, that you have all of these lickspittles right around Trump, and Graham managed to still exude a certain sort of confidence in his own swagger and his own position, unlike others like Marco Rubio, who looks and is portrayed as just the most cowardly human being. You can see the tension on his face when he stands behind Trump every time Trump says something dumb, which is about every 10 seconds.
Right.
But with Graham, he stands very confidently, or he stood very confidently with Trump on all things, and managed to sort of exude this personal confidence about his positions. And that made it even worse, because as in the 2016 campaign, you saw how smart Graham was, right? You saw he has his own ideas. He seemed or appeared willing to stand up for them. Like you said, he felt like a true believer in his causes. And then to see someone so confidently back someone with no intellectual capacity, with no central theme, with no core tenets except self, right? Is such a blinding. It's so awful. And it is, I think one of the tragedies of one of the beauties of a written tragedy is that the reader or the viewer or the consumer of those tragedies can place themselves in every single character within that. And watching someone like Lindsey Graham makes you feel really bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. It is this is possible in the human condition, and it's possible for me. Would I stand up? Would I pass off a chance to be the right-hand man of a despot? I don't know. Of course I would, but no despot's asking me for help. That's for sure. Right.
Well, not surprisingly, Donald Trump made Lindsey Graham's death all about him, which is what Donald Trump does. I know he told CNN he was one of 17 people who ran against me, and he was a smart guy, and it was a nasty campaign. It was tough. He was tough and nasty, but I was nasty too. And I got to know him by little drips and drabs, and we became friendly. And there was no better advocate for me.
Yeah.
I think we have a clip where he's talking to NBC for Meet the Press. boy, does Trump sound rough. He made another trip to the doctor, but this is what he had to say about Lindsey Graham to them.
They like him. He was so intent. I mean, he literally called me about the Save America Act. That's why he's, that's where I heard it. Think of it. He's traveling for many, many hours. That's a long flight. That's a long trip. And he, calls me about the Save America Act. He thought we were going to get it passed.
Do you remember
This is a big blow to the Save America Act. Let me tell you.
Do you remember?
Before we get into Trump's annual visit to the doctor every month, how do you think the media is covering the death of Graham, and particularly in conjunction with the last 8 years of his life?
Well, there's always hagiography. I mean, that's just a part of things. There are a lot of parts of somebody's biography that don't make it in, and usually those are more of the negative ones. I think this one came as a real shock. So, I'm sure everybody had their packages for Mitch McConnell ready to go, and then they had to switch gears. So that creates some tension there in the media business, I can tell you. But, I think one last thing that we need to sit with Lindsey Graham's death is, to the end, he was still like the biggest backer of Zelensky and Ukraine within Trump's immediate circle. And that is now gone. And that leaves a huge hole there. And it is a hole that Putin will gladly fill.
And look, I don't want to engage in conspiracy theories and all of that kind of thing, but I would ask this. If you're a senator who is pro Zelensky, are you just being the slightest bit more careful these days?
He was just in Ukraine. He was touring a top secret facility. And I mean, let us be clear, both the Iranians and the Russians who hate Lindsey Graham have a long track history of, assassinating officials. And again, I am as far from a conspiracy theorist as you can get. I'm a journalist of 25 years. And yes, I know the Trump administration has their own agenda to spin up conspiracy theories, and nobody wants Kash Patel investigating anything other than his own drinking habit. But, I think we do need to monitor this story because, I mean, he was dead at 71 after traveling to Ukraine. Not the most normal circumstances.
No, and suddenly, and all of those things. And again, folks, rely on facts. Don't rely on conjecture. But I do think it's worth, with a dearth of information, right? First of all, you can't take Kash Patel seriously for any kind of investigation, right? But second of all, the real the knock-on effect of an assassination or of a death like this is the chill that it sends rippling across the system. So I'm interested to hear over the course of the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks how previously pro Zelensky and Ukraine senators and congressmen and women are messaging about Ukraine and Zelensky. Right. Because here's the other thing that we know is that with people like Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump in charge, nobody here is safe. Right.
No, because they don't know how to keep the country safe.
No. And let me just say one thing. There's explosive diarrhea going around the country right now. We're not safe literally from anything.
I'm in Lansing, Michigan. We have like the highest rate with Detroit. Nobody knows what's going on. Yeah. It's like, don't go out for a salad if you live here. It's that bad. And like, nobody knows what's going on because Doge and RFK Jr. cut all the scientists who could tell us.
This is what I'm talking about. Like oh my God. This is the world we live in, Susan. This is not great.
No, not at all. Well, we did get proof of life from Mitch McConnell after a month with a photo that he released with the newspaper in hand. I mean, literally a proof of life photo with his wife, who left the country in the middle of his illness, which all this is so weird. And clearly transparency is for some people and not for others. You know, I think we do have to talk about, just practically speaking, now Trump is down 2 votes in a closely divided Senate. He wants the Save America Act more than anything.
Yeah.
He wants the filibuster killed. I mean, we have the issue of 2 men, and they're, you know, one died, another has a very serious illness, but there are huge implications for the Senate at large.
So it's not just those 2, but Trump himself, having gone to the doctor every fortnight, essentially, to continue to get checked out. These are not healthy people. And there's a bigger story here in the world of American politics, and that we've always been ruled, for the last 40 years by men who were born in the 40s and early 50s. That's a whole other story. They don't. There is one grand election in the sky that is voting them out one by one. So all of these policies are so bad, and I think it's telling that the Republican messaging on the SAVE Act is that, like, this is common sense. It's just common sense. There's so much common sense in this bill. It's just common sense.
Common sense that you should need a birth certificate to go vote, or a passport.
Right. Yeah. It's just common sense. Yeah. And I think everybody sees through this, because it is shit. It is so horrible. And so all of these policies feel perched atop this sort of house of cards that consists of dying men. Right? Yeah. Right? What happens when all of them die? We're like, okay, now we can stop talking about this shit? Or have they built an infrastructure of other men? And I'm saying men because it's, Andrew Watkins and I always talk about these people. They are all white men. That's the whole point of this thing. Have they built the foundation firmly and solidly enough of these, white Christian nationalists to continue the fight when they are all gone?
I mean, I think that you and Andrea talk a lot about the scary young cohort that, has been building on the right. And certainly it seems like every few months we get like leaked texts from, various young Republican groups that like just looks like the Hitler Youth. I mean, it's that bad. It's oven jokes about Jews and just, women as being vessels, and just the most disgusting racism you've ever seen. And like, they are building a foothold of power. They're further right than Donald Trump is, which is
by far
mind-blowing to, contemplate. And so they are building that infrastructure. And I think we see on the flip side with the Democratic Party, where, there are lots of old people in charge here too, as well. You're seeing the younger insurgency. They're winning some primaries. There's an attempt to build a healthy infrastructure, albeit slowly. And, this is just a general growing pains for the country. But I think there is going to be a power vacuum at some point, because, people like Chuck Grassley are in their 90s. They're not going to be here forever.
No, like every morning we should check our email first thing for, the next one to fall. And I think, speaking of the Democrats, the infrastructure that they're pushing is like this Graham Platner business. And Susan, you were so spot on with Platner the entire time. And I think everyone, who were Platner, either apologists in the beginning for the Nazi tattoo or any of those things, we were riding high on hope, like, come on, just something. Right. But these also, there were memes and posts over the weekend and last week that were like, look, you nominate any woman and she's got Nazi tattoos, it's not happening.
We didn't elect women because of their laughs,
Yes.
Okay.
That is it. The Democrats are barking up always the wrong tree, right?
Honestly, the fact that his campaign was orchestrated by the heir to the Toys R Us fortune, who's going to tell us what the working class wants. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And he raised $16 million and there's maybe $100,000 left. A lot of people were doing pretty well off of the oyster farmers, persona. We've just the right has no bullshit detector, right? They got Donald Trump, the ultimate swindler. We've got to have a better bullshit detector. It's not, let's never let anyone in the club. Let's not have anybody under 80 in the party. It's, let's maintain standards and our values, and let's recruit new people that we can be confident that don't turn into Fettermans and start voting against everything we hate.
I think that's exactly right. And I think, it feels like the impulse with maybe Fetterman back in the day, but Platner for sure, was that, well, the right is winning on cult of personality. We need our own cult of personality. But
right.
Gang, a cult of personality is not a good thing, right? I think that they were, at a minimum, they were like, well, the tattoos, he's rough around the edges. He's got this military background. He's an oyster farmer. He's got the story. He'll grab attention. Mm-hmm. And the impulse to find someone like the top criteria is that you can grab people's attention.
Yeah.
Is bullshit. It is a terrible thing because Facebook, that's Facebook's model, right? Mm-hmm. And they're making everyone crazy. The attention is a commodity, sadly, but it is not the commodity that's going to drive our democracy into the future. It's just, it can't be.
Look, I'm a broken record on this, that, politicians aren't your friends. They work for us. It's great to be inspired, and I've been inspired by people, but I've never agreed with anybody 100% on anything. And so you can have your fandoms for people that you want to go see at the movies, or, people on your Spotify playlist, and that's totally cool. But for politicians, even if you're I really love Zoran Mandami, he's still not your friend, he's still, and probably you don't even live in New York. So it's he literally doesn't even work for you.
No.
And everybody can make mistakes. Nobody is infallible, and politicians are never going to care about you more than they care about themselves. And so, we do need people who are inspiring and know how to communicate. But we can't, decide to do the same Trump model, because we're going to end up with the same problems that Republicans have.
Yeah, and I do think we're in this moment where it is increasingly tough to have substance, right? And I think that anyone fooled by Platner felt a sort of hope that the substance was primary. Yeah. And the controversy was secondary, but it's always going to be flipped in that case. And it's evidenced by when he went down, it was all his denials were very Trumpist,
Right. Yeah.
She was lying, is the
They're
hit job.
Out to get me. There's always a day.
Exactly. And look, I think we can live in. Here's the funny thing. My kid is a huge Timothée Chalamet fan, right?
Uh-huh.
If she knew the reality of who that guy is, and I don't know who he is, but I bet you.
I know he's Kylie Jenner's boyfriend. That's about the extent of what
that's kind of all you need to know, right? If she faced the reality of who he was actually personally, you have a disillusionment, but you have to suspend your disbelief when it comes to actors. You need to buy into them as human beings.
Right.
Politicians, you need to have. Joe Biden's a great example. He had a really strong sort of heart center, right? He felt like he had a lot of integrity. Mm-hmm. He did things for often the right reasons. His last moves were not great, but here we are. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say about the Democrats. I think we'll get there. There's young people coming in.
Almost over. I can see that. That's,
yeah.
Well,
we're running out of 85-year-olds to place the 87-year-olds with.
I know. It is an amazing thing to witness. Well, why don't we talk about what we've got going on this week on Lincoln Square? Today we have Frank Figluzzi. We'll have Stacey Young of the Justice Connection. They're going to be talking about the Todd Blanche nomination. Both of them are part of a group of 1,200 former DOJ and other law enforcement officials that are opposing his nomination. So that should be a really great discussion between the two of them.
Yeah, and I think this is a a story that's getting sort of the edge case, of the internet and the people who are fully online all the time. This needs to be a bigger story. Blanche is terrible.
Yeah. I mean, he is the reason why we don't have half of the Epstein files that legally have to be released, and he keeps telling courts to piss off. He acts more like Trump's personal attorney, which he was for years, than he does as an acting attorney general or a deputy, which he was formerly. I mean, I think all of us can see what a disaster he is, but people who worked on the inside of law enforcement agencies, Frank at the FBI, other people who have worked for other areas of DOJ, they know what working for Todd Blanche is up close, and a guy like him, and why he should be nowhere near that position.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. On Wednesday, you've got Wednesday, big Wednesday. It's a big Wednesday this week.
Wednesday.
You have Angelo Carusone of Media Matters on First Draft. That'll be really an interesting conversation. Media Matters is doing interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're like the OGs of holding the right wing accountable, often just by tracking down what they're saying and making sure that gets out beyond their core audience, because how it hits the party faithful is quite different than, when you're looking at like Tucker Carlson called for the death of who, they're doing great work. They have been fighting the Trump administration that has been trying to go after them in many regulatory capacities. So really looking forward to having Angelo come back and talk with us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another unholy ground. Andrew and I talked about it this week. The Christian nationalist right is saying they're saying these things. They say we don't want women to vote. It should be a single vote, male household. That's the vote. They need to be Christian. Like they're saying all of these things, but our side is not hearing it.
Right.
We're not in that bubble. We're this.
We don't attend the TPUSA conferences.
Amen. Oh my God. Yikes. But when we tell our audiences that what these people are saying, they're like, you guys are crazy. That's not happening. That's so nuts. But that's actually what's really happening. And I think Media Matters does a great job of saying, wait. Take them in their own words.
Right.
Like, hear this. This is what they're saying. What do you think about that?
Yep. And then also on Wednesday,
Glenn Kirschner on 6 Questions with Stephen Beschloss. Such a fun show, by the way.
Yeah.
I really love that show. And also, if you guys like that show, go to Apple Pods or go to Spotify and follow the episodes. That really helps.
Yeah. And if you missed it yesterday, Stuart Stevens was on talking about Lindsey Graham. So we'll be posting that later on today. Really fascinating revelations from someone who, has worked with Lindsey Graham. I mean, Stuart has advised so many Senate Republicans, and he knows what Lindsey Graham is like in a personal sense. And so getting his perspective on that tragedy is really fascinating. And then, as you mentioned, Rick Wilson went on air and talked as well about Lindsey yesterday.
Yeah, this is, one thing that I think we really try to do is find those voices that have been in the room, that, these sort of eyewitness to all of this history. And these guys, Rick and Stu and Joe Trippy and Matthew Dowd, all of these guys have been in these rooms where all the things we're seeing now started to swirl and develop and take place and transform into this kind of hellscape we're in right now. They have the receipts,
right?
So it's always really fascinating to hear.
Yeah. And then on Friday on It's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, we'll have David Smith, who is the DC bureau chief for The Guardian, which sometimes I think, it's a paper out of the UK. Sometimes I think their political reporting is better than a lot of our outlets here in the US. Sometimes maybe having an outside perspective on things helps. But I love the conversations that Edwin has, especially with journalists. He had Laura Jadid on last week, who's a freelance journalist and was covering the Great American State Fair debacle with Trump from the inside. And I think he always is able to get people who are doing fascinating reporting.
Yeah, the Guardian. It's kind of become my go-to. The reporting is great. They don't pull punches. They don't feel like they're dependent on access, like they're doing the real work of journalism and finding their sources. And yeah, it's really good reporting. I'm excited for that conversation.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, I'm sure you can guess what our call to action is, our weekly assignment, and that is to contact your senators and tell them not to confirm Todd Blanche. And when we send out this episode, we'll give you a call to action link to make things easier for you. But of course, this is the switchboard.
Yeah, it's super important. And it's such a small thing that you can do that will make a difference. Flood the zone.
Yeah, don't assume that it's a fait accompli. The Republican Senate will just confirm him. We've definitely talked with experts. I was, talking with Cam Stevenson from Courier last week, who's been reporting on the Blanche nomination. And yes, it's looking like Republicans will go ahead and rubber stamp this guy, but don't give them a reason where they can say, like, I haven't heard from my constituents, so I guess this is okay. Make it uncomfortable. Make this an issue.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Well, Sam, another crazy weekend. Maybe we'll have a calm one to talk about next week.
I'm sure.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, more obituaries, I'm sure.
Oh, no. Anyway, well, thank you all for joining us. As always, appreciate you being here.
Thanks, everyone.